Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hello, and welcome to the Castle of Horror interview segment, where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. This week we're talking to Greg Scott, whose new book, Steve McQueen, Full-Throttle Cool, comes out in July. Greg is a comic book artist who has done stints at both Marvel and DC and Image and Archie, working on series like Gotham Central and Sam and Twitch and X-Files, at least one of the X-Files series. He's also a film fanatic, and he typically watches, it says, 2 movies a day. The aesthetic of film informs his work. That is true. We'll talk about that more so than traditional drawing. I don't know what that means. Get sneak peeks at Greg's blog, gregscottart.blogspot.com. Hello, Greg.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Outstanding.
Wow, I spend a lot of time watching movies, apparently.
Yeah, well, this I stole this bio actually off of Amazon. So your publisher is telling the world that you watch 2 movies.
I saw that, and I want to know who. I spend 4 hours a day. No way, but okay. I mean, that sounds like a great life, you know.
Maybe maybe it's 2 90-minute movies. Maybe these are like, so that would still be 3 hours a day. So
yes, I only buy Blu-rays, and I have to check the running time on the back.
Right. So you can get your 3 to 4 hours.
That's right.
Of watching in. But I mean, I think the reason why somebody would use that, obviously a publicist wrote that, but you watch an awful lot of movies, and look, in all honesty, you and I talk on the phone a lot. I know that we both watch a lot of movies, but it's true. I mean, all the time that I've known you as an artist, looking at like Sam and Twitch and X-Files and sort of Dracula, which we did together back at Image, your art has a very, very filmic quality. I don't even know if that's a real term, but is that true? What I just read, is that true that you take film and the composition of film into account when you're drawing?
I do, but it's not at this point it's not even a deliberate sort of discipline. it just kind of organically happens. I mean, I think all the stuff that I've poured in my brain over the years is just that's how it comes out. And do
you think about like where the camera is? I often wonder about this. Like let's say there, because I haven't read the Steve McQueen book yet, but I want to ask you about it. But before I do that, if Dwight John Zimmerman is the guy who wrote the Steve McQueen book. He gives you a script and it says, Steve meets with a couple of people in a waiting room somewhere. First of all, when you get a script like that, do you decide, on this first panel, I think we should hang the camera up above them, looking down, like through the ceiling fan, or does the script usually describe that stuff, or how do you make those decisions?
Well, Dwight's scripts are really very kind of just matter of fact and kind of open, but at the very beginning, the publisher told me to knock that off when I started doing the sexy shots, the worm's eye view. I mean, they wanted just almost like as if the camera's always at waist level. They don't want any. It's not Neil Adams doing Dead Man. They just wanted.
So in that case, what you're saying is Zimmerman turns in the script. The script says, they're meeting in a waiting room, and they have dialogue, and if Steve needs to pick up a glass, then it'll include that. But otherwise, it won't tell you like where we're looking from or anything.
Yeah, no, it's just very straight. And taking into consideration the audience for that, they don't, they're not probably too interested in kind of, esoteric graphic novel tricks, so to speak. They just want to see pictures, and they want to see a lot of Steve and a lot of motorcycles.
So tell me a little bit about the book, Steve McQueen, Full-Throttle Cool. Sorry, who is it aimed at? And
it's from Motor Books. I have an agent, Howard Zimmerman, in New York City. I live in Staten Island, and he called me and said, I got this project that I think you'd be good for, and I did just a few likenesses of Steve, and that kind of sealed it. And it just basically tells his life story from birth to death, and he's really a fascinating guy. I mean, he was really, you talk about, living a full life, and he died so young too. But
how old was he when he died?
I think he was 52. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's aimed at motor enthusiasts, like motorcycle enthusiasts.
Well, they gearheads. I didn't know what a gearhead was, but yeah, that's what the publisher said. This is for gearheads.
Wow.
And he just a lot of behind the scenes stuff. He was very altruistic. He supported he shot this movie, The Sand Pebbles, and he supported a girls' school for like 25 years and didn't tell anyone.
That's
he didn't.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
no, remember we were talking about how some artists do these things without telling anybody. Like I was reading the Chris Farley.
Right.
And how he's working the soup kitchens and working the missions, and it's just something he does. He'll just go there on the weekend, and he didn't. It wasn't a call the publicist. Chris Farley's working a soup kitchen. It's just Chris Farley just wants to go and do that because it's something he wants to do. It's funny these guys who do these things.
There was this woman, this girl who was an extra on one of his movies, and he struck up a conversation with her and found out, her mother had terminal cancer and was in this ward at this kind of charity hospital, and Steve moved her into a hospice, and she went out, with comfort and a little more dignity than what she would have otherwise. But there's a lot of stories about it, and it's just really fascinating. Also, he did stuff like he did stuntman work uncredited on movies, like on Burt Reynolds' Gator movies and things like that. He was the stuntman. Yeah, and never
I was thinking
told
about
anyone.
Gator the other night. That whole world of like very practical action movies from the mid-'70s.
Hell, meet 'em, baby.
Yeah, White Lightning and Gator and Hooper and
yeah, wasn't that like Hal Needham? Who used to be a stuntman.
Hal Needham made Cannonball Run, didn't he? I think.
I think anyway, Stoker Ace.
Yeah. But I believe Needham was also the creative force behind Cannonball Run. Somebody may very well write in and go, "You guys are idiots." Hal Needham ended up. So I don't.
Okay. A little bit of Burt Reynolds trivia here. Burt made like this comeback in the early '80s. It was like his comeback year. He had 3 movies that it was one of them was like an Elmore Leonard film, and like in one year he did 3 movies. And
okay, all right.
I actually saw all 3 of them in the theaters. Oh,
wait. You said the '80s. Isn't this comeback you're talking about in the '90s? Isn't it?
Was it the '90s? It could have been the '90s, late '90s.
You're talking about when
early '90s.
Because you're talking about God. Of course. There's the what was the porn movie? The one.
Boogie Nights.
Yeah, Boogie Nights.
Boogie Nights.
There was
one where he was a real actor.
Oh, he's really, yeah, no, he's actually, to be honest, if you look back at I realize I didn't answer your question. He was still a big hit. Around Cannonball Run, he was still like a major hit. Stoker Ace, but
I think that's when he started to cool off. Was that Stoker Ace? It was the Lonnie Anderson curse, is what it was.
But actually, Burt Reynolds said something in an interview about that time, like for HBO, that that always made me really respect that guy, no matter what, no matter who bitches about Burt Reynolds. And it's that he was uncomfortable with the word fans. I found that fascinating because this was one of the biggest stars on the planet. And somebody goes, well, what do you think your fans, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, God, I hate that word. It sounds like I'm saying, my slaves sing really well, And I thought, that's pretty slick. Also, if you look at him in Deliverance, Jesus, Burt Reynolds is an action star in Deliverance, like a real deal action hero.
I saw that recently, and it really holds up.
Oh my God, yeah. James Dickey's in it, by the way. James Dickey, the novelist.
James Dickey is the sheriff.
Yes, he's
James
good.
Dickey.
He's actually very naturalistic.
Yeah. He had this kind of laconic Tommy Lee Jones quality to him. Kind of quiet and reserved, and yeah.
He like squints into the sun and says, that guy will probably come back.
Yeah.
There's something dreamy about Deliverance. There's a point, like, when they stop, and after all the attacks, they stop to report things, and they're, like, having fried chicken and everything. It just, you feel literally like you're lost in a dream world. Like they're just, that's an expert film.
Yeah, I love that scene, where Ned just says, "Well, these peas are something. No, this corn is something special, ain't it?" Just finding solace in the mundane.
It is wonderful. Okay, I'm sorry. We've gotten far afield from Steve McQueen. Here's a question. I haven't read the book yet. Does the Blob show up at all? The Blob, the movie?
The Blob, yeah, man. I think we do a page on the Blob.
I love the Blob. The Blob is one of my favorite movies of all time. Steve McQueen's fantastic. He's like a 30-year-old high school freshman in that movie, but he's great, and he has a nice monologue towards the end. There's a point where they have, what we would call the midpoint in screenwriting lingo, where fight. Now we're going to stop and like nuzzle up against the girl in the trees and look at the stars, and he has a little monologue about what his hopes and dreams are. It's great. I thought Steve McQueen was fantastic in that.
All those Adler inside the Actors Studio, Adler Studios method acting paying off there.
Yes, yeah. It's so funny the look too. If you look at that movie, I mean, it's really of its time, and it's funny to think that it was attempting to show a youth gang, a quote unquote contemporary youth gang, in '58, and he's wearing like his blue jeans and his like brown members only jacket, if I recall. It's the most clean cut gang leader, ever. Nice stuff, neat stuff. No motorcycles though. He drove a hot rod like Archie. You have a long relationship now with Archie, isn't that right?
I do. Who would have ever thought that would happen? And they're just fantastic people to work for, and they're actually very enthusiastic, which I really appreciate. It's
You
fun.
started with Sam and Twitch. I know you've done a cover.
Sam Hill.
Sam Hill. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
And you've done a cover of the Afterlife with Archie for them.
Yeah.
I think I've heard you say this, that Archie, that you always feel like the way that Archie maintains its world but also reinvents itself all the time is just really clever. I mean, what do other, if I can phrase this in a question, what do you think other comic book, powers that be have to learn from Archie comics?
Respect their audience and respect their own material,
What do you mean by that?
Archie has a constant turnover of their audience. There's always, we have daughters. There's always girls that are going to be reading and want to be introduced to that world.
Right.
I don't know so much, about little boys. I'd be interested in the demographics on that.
I don't have any, so I don't. I literally have no idea. Like if 9-year-old boys are reading Archie, I don't know.
I did when I was a kid, though. I did.
I did too. No, I absolutely did. So but I know that girls dig games as much as boys do. The question is, if you, but can boys tear themselves? Do they prefer to tear themselves away from games to read Archie comics the way that girls do?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. We would need somebody on who actually has boys. But it's so funny because those are, like you said, there's always 9-year-old girls, right? But those Archie comics, the Betty and Veronica, the ones you get at the grocery store, those are pretty much the same as they've been for something like 60 years. They're new. Sure.
The dynamics are the same. The, I guess, mythology, if you want to call it that, is the same, and it's reinvented for every decade, I guess, or it's they add a little.
It'll be subtly tweaked.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're doing all this other stuff, and I don't even completely understand how they keep them separate, but they do. The Afterlife with Archie,
it's funny. It's funny. Afterlife. My daughter Julia, she's 9. She will not even look at Afterlife with Archie. She glanced at it. She goes, "Oh no," like if I don't see it, it doesn't exist.
It's like they have no fear. Archie has no fear of something being non-brand. You know what I mean? It's totally it's totally fine. Dan Parent can keep writing, his regular Betty and Veronica, and somebody else can do a really scary and adult violent and sometimes sexually explicit adult book, they'll both have Archie Comics logo on them, and we trust our audience to sort of filter themselves out. And in theory, the parents to filter it out.
Well, like what you said about other companies, I really wish that they would, respect their source material the way Archie has. I mean, there's no, we've talked about this before. There's no all ages stuff. There's no, stuff that, I mean, as much as Julia loves the Justice League, the Bruce Timm Justice League and Young Justice and Teen Titans even, there's no comics for her. There's no,
there are a couple.
There's Tiny Titans. There's Tiny Titans.
Well, there's Teen Titans Go, which is a funny book that replaced Tiny Titans. There's but that's about it. But I mean, think about this. Think about this, Greg. When you and I were, young, the mainline DC Comics. In other words, the main bulk of it was all ages comics. The Justice. If you could pick up the Justice League, the regular mainline Justice League issue, it was going to be acceptable. There wasn't going to be, it would be what we would now call like it was a TV-12, TV-7 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, but it was long and complicated and had continuity and all that stuff, but it was, whereas now the mainline DC books are the ones that are generally much more violent and aren't appropriate. And you have to go to like the quote-unquote the kids books for stuff that because you can't put a Batman comic where Joker's face is literally torn off and like stapled back on or whatever the hell it is in the hands of a 9-year-old boy. That's just pathetic. Yeah,
and when I go to the comic shop with Julia, she looks at this stuff and she's not repulsed, but she's kind of repelled. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, right. Sorry, it's not enticing to her. And by the way, I have a cold. I'm really sorry.
Now you got No, you got, like I told you, you got the Lester the Nightfly thing happening there.
Yes. Yeah. This is this is if I want to give up and become a quiet storm, like in St. Louis, or whatever. No, but I think DC. We're picking on DC, but I think DC is actually going to turn that ship around a little bit. I have that feeling. I mean, and the reason I say that is like Convergence, for instance, for 2 months. I don't know if you've paid any attention to this, but Convergence is going to have like 2 issues of 80s style Batman and the Outsiders, 2 issues of 80s style New Teen Titans, Matrix Supergirl, which was the Peter David reboot from like a few years ago. They're going to like revisit all this old stuff. I have no idea what comes next, but I don't think that we're going to see the same. I don't think we're going to see Sexbot Starfire much anymore. We might. I could be totally wrong, but I have a feeling that stuff is going to.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that just would grind Julia's gears. It's like
right.
If she saw that, she would just probably get pretty pissed off. That's not my Starfire. They're very proprietary about the characters at that age.
Yes. Well, and some of the older girls have actually written letters to DC saying, listen, I grew up with Starfire being fun and hilarious and goofy, and you've replaced her with this sort of weird male sexual fantasy. And that's, first of all, it's totally turning off female readers. But second, we can do, I don't know, we can do better. I just kind of feel like it's if you want to have something there's always going to be books that are going to be sexually exploitative that you can turn to for that.
Sure.
And Vampirella, and what have you, but it just felt wrong. Then again, hey, they're their toys. I mean, so let me ask you a question. Let's say somebody called you up, DC called you up and said, we're doing a big new reboot of, Wonder Woman, but we're going to make her, some sort of masochistic.
I couldn't do that because I'd have to, like, when Julia walked in my studio, I'd have to, hide the pages. I couldn't do that. Now, if you said Wildcat or something like that, like some dark noir character, that'd be fun. But
absolutely. Yeah. But you're like the crazy the crazy male fantasy sexual stuff, yeah, it would be hard to do it. I mean, there's very little in terms of writing that I would turn down, but I don't know if that would interest me very much, you know.
It's funny. Like when I first started, I was just thirsty for anything that came my way, and now it's, you know, if I'm going to sit down for 8-10 hours a day, I want to have something that's fun and that, you know, kind of addresses my interests a little more. Now I'm not a dilettante, and I'm not turning stuff down, and I'm not really in a position to turn stuff down. I'm really fortunate. I've got work, and, you know,
you're feeding the pipeline, right? I mean, isn't that how it
works?
You're working on something now, and at the same time, you're out there seeing who has what, you know, what's coming around the bend.
Yeah. Hey, I'm paying the bills, and I got stuff coming in, and so I'm very happy. But, you know, I don't know if I'd really be too keen to do some kind of gross thing like that.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, we were talking earlier about the short-lived Penthouse comics of the 1980s, you know, and how, God, can you imagine how, I mean, again, I got no true objection to adult material, but it would just kind of get me down to be working on that, like, every day, like, literally, like every day, go in, do your 8 to 10 hours drawing, you know, true pornography, maybe getting paid $1,000 a piece.
Hey, I worked at Neil Adams Continuity, so I know about, you know, going to the coal mine every day. I mean,
yeah. How many? So speaking of the process, like, how many pages is the Steve McQueen book?
87.
87. All right. So you get a script for an 87-page book, you know, and I know right now you're working on another long book like that. You get a script for an 87-page book. How do you estimate, like, how long it's going to take you to do that? I mean, how many, you know, how many pages do you do a week?
Wow, I'm giving away. Okay, so I can, when I'm really disciplined, sit down.
You don't have to answer anything you don't want.
Well, I can sit down and do like a page a day, a page and a half a day. I have done 2 pages a day, and, you know, like I said, I worked briefly for Neil Adams, and one thing that was fantastic about Neil is very little penciling and a lot of inking. So most, you know, my pencils are like hieroglyphics. I do almost everything in the inks.
And you're doing the pencils and the inks yourself.
Yeah.
You're not using an inker. So you know, so you're saying in the end you might try to get out, like, I don't know, what, like 15 pages a month or something, or
yeah, I mean, that sounds good, but the truth is you know, I'm a putterer. You know, I get up, I have my coffee, I walk around the house, I do this, you know, and then it's noon. I guess I should sit down and start working. I mean, I don't know, man. I'm not as disciplined as I should be. I'm really not, because especially I talk to other guys, and they're so laser focused, and I kind of envy that. But then again, I'm kind of, I don't know. I guess I found
you hit your. I once worked with an artist. I've worked with a lot of artists. I mean, but I remember I once worked with one where this guy was very new, right? And you may identify with this. And he really overdrew every page, so that every page took like way longer than it should have, because he was trying to make each one perfect. You know, well,
yeah, but that's, you know, I think that's, I'm sure writers have this too, where, like, you know, at the beginning of your career, or, you know, your life doing this, it's like running a marathon on your knees on glass. It's painful. It's you know, and then after a while, after you do it so much, there's just a confidence. I mean, you know, now I can be more relaxed because I go, okay, I'll do that page tomorrow, or I'll do this one. That's also why I skip around so much in a script. I don't do it like page 1, 2, 3. I'll do page 1 and page 15, and, you know, whatever interests me.
I remember in the past when we've worked together, what I'll do is I'll write the script so it's broken into segments, you know, and I think this is probably pretty typical. So, like, you'll say, like, page 4 through 7 is a scene where they're riding in the car talking or whatever, and that way you can totally do that. You can jump around and go, you know, I'm going to grab this scene and pick that up and go back and do this. How do you think your drawing style has changed since sort of Dracula, which you did for Image, and I wrote back, and that's like a number of years ago now. And so, how has your drafting changed since then?
I think I'm just much more relaxed, and I've really simplified a lot. I don't feel that need to cram everything into every panel, and I think I'm a lot more bold. I'm a lot bolder in my inking. Not just a confidence, I think, but I used to look at stuff, and then at the end I do stuff, and at the end of the day I was like, you just recriminations, and this is terrible, and now I just put it aside. Okay, I'll fill in the blacks later, and
You still, one thing I remember from looking at your art on a number of projects, is you would use all kinds of things. You used, because your work works really well in black and white. First of all, is the Steve McQueen book in color or black and white?
It's black and white with gray tones.
Okay, with gray tones. Who did the tones?
I did.
You did them yourself? Oh, you did the tones. Okay. So anyway, first of all, the high contrast black and white images that you create initially, you're using pins, you're using Sharpies, if I recall, you're using whiteout to create negative images on black sometimes. I don't know if you still do that.
Yeah, I mean that's one reason I can't sell my originals, because they're too caked. I mean they're mounds.
They fall apart in the mail.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, and paste ups, and they're just this
paste up. So you mean you'll draw an image on a different sheet and then tape it onto the original?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just spray mount on the back and pop it right over. If I don't like a face or something, I'll just white it out and stick a picture.
Does that happen a lot? Where faces. If you're a non-illustrator, it's impossible to imagine. Like draw me a picture of Susan Sarandon, right? But or especially a face or a face, like Steve McQueen. But if you turn in a book and somebody comes back and says, I don't like the way Steve's face looks in this particular image. I think his cheekbones are a little wide. Can you give me another face? Does that get frustrating, or is that just part of the business, or how does that?
I haven't been really cursed that much with having stuff sent back. It happens sometimes, so you have to just kind of deal with it. I'm working for Scholastic right now and doing a job for them, and there's a lot of corrections, quote unquote, but it's not that painful. It's just part of it. Going in that when you're doing licensed stuff or stuff for a company where they're not interested in your art, they're interested in the end product.
Right, they have a particular vision that they want to see met. I remember Kevin J. Anderson was talking about writing X-Files novels, and he said, an X-Files novel is not the place to pull out Kevin J. Anderson's daring reinvention of Mulder and Scully. It's a place for people to open up the book and recognize Mulder and Scully as the way they love them. Brought to you by Kevin J. Anderson.
Exactly. Right, you're like an actor. You want to hit your marks. Say your lines and get off stage. Right.
And then you do your own. In his case, it's like, but I write my own novels, and those are the place to be. To bring you Kevin J. Anderson's daring vision of whatever it is. And that's true. I know it's impossible. You constantly want to sort of bring your own stamp to things. If you think of like one person who's broken out of that entirely and can do any damn thing he wants. Joss Whedon doesn't just bring you the Avengers as you expect them. He brings you Joss Whedon's Avengers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess that's the inspiration for all of us, is figure out a way to put your stamp on something, but make it make it memorable, make it so that people accept it instead of resenting it.
Well, I'm not really brave enough to make that leap and just do my own stuff. I would love to write my own stuff. I'm not brave enough yet to do that. I always have to have that paycheck and that project, percolating or waiting in the wings that I can kind of rely on.
Well, it's funny. There's no particular reason you couldn't write something that you're being hired to draw. Like John Byrne made that leap, right?
Sure. Yeah, but if like I wouldn't want to. Boy, this sounds pretentious. I wouldn't want to waste the good stuff on somebody else's toys.
No, but that's not pretentious. I mean, that is really valid. You know, but you're really good with dialogue. I'm not blowing smoke, but you are really good with dialogue. So there's no reason you couldn't. Maybe we'll see. Maybe someday we'll get a chance to make that happen on something we do together. But I wanted to ask about coloring, because I know you've had some really interesting perspectives on color. You know, you said that Steve McQueen is grayscale. Do you feel like your work thrives better in black and white, or do you feel like it's just a matter of getting the right color, or what?
Well, I mean, I would always, I think I'd prefer black and white. My problem with, modern coloring is, you have a million colors, and a lot of colorists seem to want to use them all. I like the more muted palettes. I like the more, controlled, laid back, reserved. I guess that's the word. Reserved use of color. Have you looked at some of the experiments where they'll take a classic 4-color comic, like take, The Killing Joke, for instance. Mm-hmm.
The Killing Joke was originally colored in a very common 1985 newsprint 4-color style, where Batman's blue and gray, and it's exactly the way you remember it. If you close your eyes and you think of coloring in the 80s, that's what The Killing Joke looks like. And they reissued it a couple of years ago, recolored, new style.
Really?
So there's lens flare everywhere, and there's.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, Brian Bowen's work doesn't really lend itself to that. I mean, the rendering is so beautiful. You don't want. That's my biggest, peeve is when the color overpowers the rendering.
I mean, I agree, and yet I wonder, is it possible to go back? I mean, and maybe somebody already is, but I mean, is it like if you were drawing the Avengers next month? Could somebody color flat? Well, your work is different, because in my mind I'm thinking of like a house style that, and when I say house style, I mean like that old like 90s.
Yeah, you said me do the Avengers. I was like, that will never happen. That would just not happen, my friend.
Yeah, but I mean, think about that. If you were to do the Avengers, they would all look like the actors. That's what would be wild. But your work, it's so funny that you're such a big appreciator of classic comics and the tradition of comics. And yet your work itself is very untraditional. I mean, to my eye.
Yeah, well, I guess I was, it comes out of advertising more than anything else. The time I spent at Neil really kind of profoundly influenced / affected me. So, I mean, when you draw somebody getting on, somebody sitting at a kitchen table, it looks like a kitchen table. It doesn't look like a suggestion of a kitchen table, or. Listen, I drew Halle Berry holding a Campbell's soup can from like 54 different angles.
Wow. What was that for?
Campbell Soup animatic for, a storyboard or something like that for Campbell Soup. I mean, it was just, they wanted her head tilted more, and then, you do that. And can you lift your chin a little bit more? And I guess, training as an artist, but, at the end of the day, you just want to go home and shave your head with a cheese grater while chewing on tinfoil. I mean, it's just,
But I mean, I was thinking about Vonnegut. God, what book was it? I think it was Bluebeard by Vonnegut. And one of his characters is an illustrator. He's this guy who, in the 1940s or so, is known for being able to do illustrations for magazines that are so good that they're nearly photography style. But he finds as he moves into the 60s and so forth that his skills are not as needed because of the advance of cheap photography and blah, 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 blah. And it's so
like
funny that, well, right. But and yet at the same time, clearly that's not completely true. You've managed to do it. And this is 2015, and you're still making a career out of this.
Yeah, but, it's like, what was that, who was it, Tarantino? He said, I've just recently realized that this is what I do for a living.
Yes.
I don't know. I've been doing this for 15 years. I'm the best kept secret in comics, but every month I have something to do.
Yeah.
So, I just sit down and do it and watch my 9 movies a day or whatever it is I'm supposed to be watching.
That's what I've heard.
Yes.
I'm sorry, my throat sounds horrible. Jeez, what a disaster. Yeah, but I've been really impressed how you've. I mean, really, it's like running a one-man ad agency where you're constantly feeding the pipeline, where you know that when you're done with this, something else has got to be ready. So you got to be working those. Is it frustrating to you? Not frustrating. It must be frustrating not to come up with a good answer, assuming you don't have necessarily a good answer for how the hell do I have your career? How do I get into your business? You know, if you meet somebody at a comic book store in Manhattan and they say, gosh, you know, Mr. Scott, how do I, you know, pattern myself after you?
See, I've been in that situation and I've frozen and I got in so much trouble because this guy asked me, you know, like, how do I do it? And what advice would you give me? And I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 18. I said, learn to play guitar. And, you know, his big brother got really pissed off and wanted to beat me up in Midtown Comics, but I don't know what to say. I mean, yeah. I fell into this. I was a bike messenger, and I dropped my samples off at Marvel Comics, and then, you know, Mark Powers calls me and says, you know, you want to draw Sabretooth? I mean, you know, it's New York.
Dude, I remember when that book came out. I was there for that. I remember that Sabretooth series.
Do you know how okay, you want to know this? I'll tell you. This is how I found, like, you couldn't get up to Marvel, like, just walk up to the front desk. So what I did was, there was, like, in a letter column something about, you know, Larry Hama or somebody was talking about, yeah, at 10 o'clock I'll be down there smoking my cigarettes. So I staked out Marvel, which I guess they were at, like, on Park Avenue at that time. Like, I think it was like 387 Park Avenue or something like that. Anyway, Park Avenue South, somewhere over there. And there were like 5 or 6 people, and I said, anyone here work at Marvel? And they all lifted their hands, and I just started handing out sample packets. I go, I'm an artist.
Kidding me.
Yeah, and I got on my bike, I had my messenger bag, and then Monday I got a call. So
wow.
That's that's my Lana Turner discovered at the, you know, the lunch counter story.
Around Derby or wherever it was. But I mean, you know, there's so many ways that story doesn't end the way it did. In other words, the brazenness is cool. It's good that you have that. The cleverness, you picked up on the clue in the letter column. That's all Hollywood cool. But you hand over the samples. The samples still have to actually seal the deal. They have to make somebody go, hey, I'm going to call this person and see if maybe they can do something for her. So here's some advice you probably could give somebody. Somebody shows you samples. What is useless to see in samples versus what is, like, good to see?
Again, I kind of panic whenever, like, it doesn't happen very often, but, you know, I've had people show me stuff, and I kind of just freeze up because I don't even know how the hell I do it. You know, it's I'm telling you, man, it's a mystery to me sometimes. I'm like, drink more coffee, you know, watch more movies. I don't know what to tell people.
Yeah.
I mean, I started drawing actually pretty late in life, and I always carried a sketchbook around, and I always doodled, but I didn't really apply myself until, you know, pretty late, actually. So I guess it's one of those things that happens, however it happens, it happens. I mean, are these things like, you know, become an actor, you know, all these actors that go to acting class and things like that, does that really benefit them? I don't know.
I have no idea. I mean, well, part of me says yes, because I know that, like, a lot of actors, you know, will find out that somebody who's doing really well actually did spend a lot of time, you know, studying at the new school, and other people didn't, you know, so it's hard to say. You know, you'll find out that somebody who's doing really great was part of Second City or was part of the Upright Citizens Brigade, you know. I have no idea how many genre novelists, which I am. I don't know how many of us are MFAs or English majors, or how many of us were just, you know, regular guys working a job and decided to start writing. I don't know. It's funny because I thought you were going to say something very prosaic, like, well, you know, continuity shot. I mean, shots that are sequential are better than a bunch of
Yeah, I wouldn't tell somebody that.
That's amazing.
I would be the worst mentor. I would be a tormentor. It would be like, kids, stay away from me. It would be, oh.
Wow. I'm not good at it either. For what it's worth, if somebody says, "Listen, tell me what is this novel good?" I'm like, I know. I mean, it's
what that really is our insecurity, and we puff up and we get grumpy. You're like, I don't know, the bristles, the shell goes up and the bristles pop out.
That's right. Oh my God. Anyway,
I'm just lucky. I do feel lucky, and I'm happy, and I'm in a good place. That's all I can say right now.
That's wonderful. All right. We should wrap this up, but so Steve McQueen comes in July.
Yeah, man.
Does it really come in July, or does it come out earlier? I mean, when
it's on Amazon now. I know. That's all I know.
I know you can order it on Amazon right now, and I will post the link.
And the cover is not. I don't know why they do this. The cover that they have on Amazon was just a little sketch I did. I don't know why they use that to advertise it, because the real book has a completely different cover.
Well, they'll be able to change that out. That happens all the time. I mean, for instance, I had an Incredible Hulk novel that had the wrong cover for a long time before the right one went up. So God knows. Oh God, I'm sorry. Well, thank you for putting up with my cough, and I really appreciate the time that you spent. I really loved this interview and hearing a little bit more about your process. And
yeah, well, maybe sometime we'll talk about comic art. So
yeah. So all right, that's it. If anybody wants to look for Steve McQueen Full-Throttle Cool, I'll put a link on the Facebook page. You can also look that up on Amazon, Steve McQueen Full-Throttle Cool by Dwight Zimmerman and Greg Scott. And if you're listening to us from Bleeding Cool, we love hearing from you. Come to the Facebook page for Castle of Horror. And thank you guys very much. All right.
Thanks,
Come on,
Greg.
Greg. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.